Loot was Orton's mature revenge on society. On his release from prison, he wrote his first performed play, Ruffian on the Stair, for BBC Radio. It explored the world in which he and Halliwell had lived, with detachment and compassion.
I filled in a form to the effect that I'm a derelict.
Yeah. My brother and me had the same trouble.
They haven't the insight into the human art that we have in Ireland.
We lived in Shepherd's Bush. We had a little room. And our life was made quite comfortable by the NAB for almost a year. We had a lot of friends, all creeds and colours, but no circumstances at all. Oh, we were happy though. We were young. I was 17, he was 23. Well, you can't do better for yourself than that, can you? We were bosom friends. I've never told anyone that before. I hope I haven't shocked you.
As close as that?
Well, we had separate beds. He was a stickler for convention, but that's as far as it went. We spent every night in each other's company. It was the reason we never got any work done.
Yeah, well, there's no word in the Irish language for what you were doing.
In Lapland, I've no word for snow.
Yeah, I'd rather not hear about it. I'm not a priest, you know.
Orton wrote Entertaining Mr. Sloane later the same year.
He came to see me after he'd written Sloane, and I wrote and said I rather liked it. I thought it was funny, a little bit derivative, a little bit conventionally written, and I told him so. And he said, well, if you don't like it, I'll try and write you a better one. So when he was leaving, I said to him, what are you living on? So he said he was living on national assistance, which at that time was £2.10 a week. So I thought, my God, how can anybody live on £2.10 a week? So I rang up Michael Codron and said, there's a rather interesting play, and the author's living on £2.10 a week, and you've got the Arts Theatre, why not read it? And within 6 weeks it was on.
I met Joe to dinner. It was given by Michael Codron. He'd rung me and said that he'd put on the production of Entertaining Mr. Sloane, which I'd seen at Wyndham's, and Michael said this was the most singular new talent to come into the British theatre, and he thought I should meet him. He was then, Joe, engaged on writing the play Loot, which hadn't got a title, and it was, I think, about halfway completed. And Michael said he thought that I should meet him because there might be a very interesting part for me, and Joe liked my work. And I went along to meet him at Michael's house. He said to me, Michael, before the whole thing began, I warn you, we'll have to have the friend there. And I didn't realize the implications of this until I actually met Halliwell. And the conversation of Joe's was punctuated by interruptions from Kenneth Halliwell. He would say, Joe, oh yeah, we went to see this thing on Wednesday night, and then the other one, Halliwell would say, no, it wasn't Wednesday. How could it be Wednesday, Joe, when that was the time we were seeing, and then he mentioned something else. And so Joe said, oh, no, it wasn't, it was Tuesday, that's right, it was Tuesday. Yes, it was Tuesday. Anyway, we went there Tuesday, got there about 7, and then Halliwell, no, it wasn't 7. How could it have been 7? We didn't leave the house. And I found this aggravating and extremely annoying. And I remember saying to Joe afterwards, at some juncture when we were alone, that endless correction, it's almost shrewish, wife-like business, must irk you. And he said, oh, no, it's all right, I'm quite used to it, no, it's all right. No, he's got a thing about accuracy. And that was true because the editing mind of Halliwell, which was very much in evidence when you came to things like rewrites, manifested itself in a very interesting way. I know on 2 different occasions, Joe would suggest a line and Halliwell would say, no, that's overlong, and condense it. Now, I saw that happen twice, and I thought, oh, yes, that is interesting.
They were both tremendously devoted to one another, the kind of relationship that only men have, and probably English men. There's a special kind of friendship between men, don't you think? Not necessarily homosexual, but this happened to be as well. And he used to talk about our play. Sloane was always our play. And after he'd seen me for the first time and we were going to do it, he brought Kenneth the second time himself. And he was Kenneth was included with everything.
And it had always seemed to me that Halliwell was an influence in the work. They read the same things together, they enjoyed the same things together, they laughed a lot at the same things together. Joe was very funny. The Halliwell and his letter writing, which was the Edna Wellthorpe stuff, they both got a tremendous kick out of, and they were very funny, those letters. He wrote to the vicar and said, you know, can we have the church hall as Edna Wellthorpe, because he said they wanted to mount their controversial plea for homosexual tolerance entitled Nelson Was a Nance. And we know that the vicar would sometimes let the church hall for nothing in worthy causes. And they got her an irate letter back saying, on the contrary, I can't possibly permit the church hall to be used for that purpose, and I don't approve either of the lampooning of a national hero. And so they wrote again and said, oh, come, surely the church, of all people, should take a merciful view. Went on and on about, you know, everyone should be understanding about these queens. And then another letter came back saying, I'm sorry, no, I don't share your views. And then he wrote again as Mrs. Wellthorpe saying, doubtless you read of my daughter Edna's demise as she's passed away, and I found in a cupboard under the stairs a voluminous amount of correspondence dealing with her work with the Spectre amateur players, the Spectre group they were called, mounting her controversial play, Nelson Was a Nance, and could we have the church hall? And this went on and on again, and the vicar wrote back and said, no, he had not read of the demise, and he was very sorry to hear about Edna passing away, but he couldn't help feeling that she'd got in with the wrong set, which I thought was a riot. That was terribly funny. And they read these things back, and they kept carbons of their originals, and these all were read back, and they did the voices, you know, reading about, I don't agree at all, and they were doing all these acts, you see, and they were writing as though Edna Wellthorpe, oh, dear vicar, I feel... And, of course, you did laugh uproariously at it. They both fell about. They loved that kind of thing.
Dear Sir, I recently purchased a tin of Morton's blackcurrant pie filling. It was delicious, chock full of rich fruit. Then, wishing to try another variety, I came upon Smedley's raspberry pie filling. And really, how can you call such stuff pie filling? I was very disappointed after trying Morton's blackcurrant. Please try to do better in future. And what on earth is edible starch and locust bean gum? If that is what you put into your pie fillings, I'm not surprised at the result. I shan't try any more of your pie fillings until the fruit content is considerably higher. My stomach really turned at what I saw when I opened the tin. Yours sincerely, Edna Wellthorpe, Mrs. Dear Madam, we acknowledge with thanks your letter and are concerned to receive your report of Smedley's canned raspberry pie filling. The most modern methods of production are employed in Smedley factories, and at every stage the strictest supervision is exercised to ensure that quality is maintained at the very highest level. Your helpful
All these sort of daft, mad dialogues were written, and they both got a tremendous kick out of it, and that's why I feel that the two of them were essentially sparking off things in each other in a very lively combination.
But professionally, their creative paths were separating. While Halliwell worked on unsaleable collage, Orton wrote the first draft of what was to be his most successful play.
Yes, I suppose that was Loot. Certainly Loot was a much better play. And again, Michael bought it, and then he thought he would spend a great deal of money on it, and he got stars, and he got Peter Wood, and a very fancy set, and it was a disaster.
People were emptying the auditorium all the time, you know, with that production, because we came under the watch committee in Manchester, because we hadn't got the seal of the Lord Chamberlain, and we had policemen in the wings saying, if you say that line, the watch committee are banning that line, if you say that line, because the policeman had to say, where do you do it? Where the streets are well lit, there are no open spaces, where do you do it? 5 pregnancies in 1 week, where have you done it? And the boy had to say, on crowded dance floors during the rumba. And they said it was a definite aspersion and rudeness about the local dance halls. And they weren't having it in the script. And these policemen were there to drag us off if we said these lines.
While the play was on its pre-London tour, Orton was made to write and rewrite constantly, in a desperate attempt to redeem faults of production and casting.